For decades, many Koreans believed that paying monthly rent was simply throwing money away. By contrast, Jeonse was seen as the ultimate way to preserve wealth. Since the tenant received the entire deposit back at the end of the lease, many viewed it not as an expense but as a temporary transfer of capital. As a result, a widespread perception emerged that monthly rentals were reserved only for those who could not afford a large Jeonse deposit. The traditional path to upward mobility for many households was simple. Save enough money to transition from monthly rent to Jeonse, continue saving, and eventually buy a home of their own. The problem is that Jeonse deposits have skyrocketed. For an ordinary Korean family, a Jeonse deposit often represents the bulk of their lifetime savings. In Seoul, the deposit for a typical apartment can easily approach $700,000. If a landlord demands a steep increase in the deposit upon lease renewal, many tenants are priced out and forced to move. Even worse, if the landlord is unable to return the deposit when the lease expires, tenants risk losing a substantial portion of their life savings, plunging them into severe financial hardship. Recognizing these vulnerabilities, the Korean National Assembly has spent decades trying to strengthen legal protections for tenants. Because abolishing the Jeonse system altogether would be political and economically disruptive, lawmakers have instead focused on enhancing housing stability and safeguarding deposits. For example, Korean law places caps on how much a landlord can raise the deposit when renewing a lease. The law also grants tenants priority over other creditors to recover their deposits if the landlord faces financial distress. However, these legal safety nets can resolve the fundamental flaw at the heart of the Jeonse system. Imagine walking into a bank and asking to borrow $300,000. Before approving the loan, the bank will meticulously vet your income, asset, existing debt, repayment history, and credit score. Only after a thought-of evaluation will the bank deem you trustworthy enough to receive the funds. Under the Jeonse system, however, this dynamic is completely inverted. The tenant hands over hundreds of thousands of dollars to the landlord with virtually no transparency regarding the landlord's financial health. In many cases, the tenant knows next to nothing about the landlord's debt, financial liabilities, or actual ability to repay the deposit. Instead, the tenant is forced to rely solely on the underlying value of the property itself. Unfortunately, if the housing market collapses or if the landlord has accumulated excessive leverage, the tenant may discover, too late, that the deposit cannot be fully recovered. As a result, many Koreans live with a chronic sense of housing insecurity. This systemic uncertainty extends far beyond the housing market. It heavily influences financial decisions, family planning, and overall quality of life. One could even argue that it dampens economic vitality and fuels growing levels of stress and anxiety throughout society. To truly understand Korea, it is not enough to look only at its economic triumphs or rapid development. You must also confront the darker side of its housing system, and few institutions reveal that reality more clearly than Jeonse. I'm a Korean lawyer, and on this channel, I explain Korean society through its laws, culture, and history. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.